She hasn't done an interview. She can't do an interview. She's barely competent, and she can't do an interview. But I look forward to the debates because I think we have to set the record straight.
Well, I'm glad that he's finally agreed to a debate on September 10th. I'm looking forward to it, and hope he shows up.
Are you open to more debate?
I am happy to have that conversation about an additional debate for after September 10th, for sure.
All right, we're back in studio now with Dan Perry, Owen Alterman, and Zach Anders. Okay, so obviously we've been talking, even the break polls seemed close, and now we're looking at the latest crossing the wires that it looks like right now. I mean, obviously we're still months away that Kamala Harris is in the lead. What is it that you guys have just been able to glean, and what would you attribute to that fact?
Well, I mean, this is unprecedented in presidential polling that, one, there's been a switch of candidates in July, but to see a meteoric rise and potentially, I mean, nothing like this has ever happened, so potentially it evens out and it comes back down to earth, but to see the Biden administration underwater in the polling, losing, to have the switch, and now today, this morning, she's up by 5. That is such a sharp drop in such a short amount of time. That's not something you see in presidential campaigns. Presidential campaigns usually stay just deadlocked for months and months and months running up to October and November.
The basic thing is Kamala Harris is not as weird as Trump. I mean, that word is now overused. It really is bizarre. I mean, Trump is obviously a singular candidate.
Press conference. You get a fragmented sentence here and there, but then you're reminded of, I'm watching what we were just critiquing Joe Biden.
Everything about Trump is beyond belief.
He's now the...
and I remind you that Trump has almost a 50% chance to win this election. I mean, let's not forget that.
By the way, I was going to say this. Yes, recent days have seen a swing in favor of Harris simply because she replaced an unviable candidate. And the difference you're seeing is that
maybe
between unviability and viability.
And people relieved.
Now, two things as far as the numbers are concerned. One, swings that are a reaction to events are not unknown. Michael Dukakis was about 12 points up on George Bush in 1988 and managed to lose the election. The other thing that has to be said is if she wins by only 5%, she might not win the Electoral College. The Electoral College has such a bizarre and indefensibly ridiculous advantage that it hands the Republicans that to win, the Democrat needs to win by like at least 3%, and to be sure of victory by about 6%.
Well, that's what Tim Walz does. He secures the blue wall, the Wisconsin, the Michigan, Minnesota.
I think secures is overconfident. I mean, a couple of points. First of all, you're both right. I mean, Zach, you're right. In recent cycles, we haven't had swings that are large. And this swing is dramatic because it is, in big picture terms, small, a swing of at most 4 points in some of the battleground states, and some only 1 or 2. But it's enough to potentially tip the scales.
He's already lost an election. He's already been kicked out of office. And he's got a Robert Kennedy problem. The 6% that it's pulling towards Robert Kennedy, those are going to be more likely to be leaning right voters anyways. This is not like Robert Kennedy is pulling voters away from a Democratic base.
Because he's a Democrat, of course, initially. By the way, that's the campaign's claim, and I tend to agree, but we really don't know. And who knows? There are all kinds of scenarios involving Kennedy. They had hoped that they would somehow win a third of the vote and end up being a relevant factor. I have to say we tend to dismiss actual policy issues, and I want to push back on that just a little bit. I am among the people who think that it would have been wiser, despite the Tim Walz euphoria here, to pick Josh Shapiro, because Pennsylvania, my state, is critical, and Shapiro would have locked down Pennsylvania. But it also represents something else, which is where the Jewish vote is relevant. The Jews may abandon the party in droves at this point, and that could be critical.
I think that's awfully unlikely. Well, after 90 years of being with the Democratic Party, this has been said before.
The Democrats will still get a majority of the Jewish vote, but if it's only 2/3, then that probably means a loss in Pennsylvania. I see two main narratives sticking. I try to talk to as many people as I can in the U.S. and to not be in my bubble. And two things that stick with Kamala Harris are that she's far left and that she's somehow anti-Israel, which plays well with the Jews or badly with the Jews, but also affects the U.S. center. A choice of Shapiro as vice president would have addressed both of those things, because he's so obviously a centrist and clearly not anti-Israel. She has, I think, missed an opportunity to do that, and as of this moment remains vulnerable to the charge that she's far left and she's not really that big a supporter of Israel, which is relevant in a few states. So I'm not a huge fan of the Walz decision. I would have preferred Shapiro.
Well,
all right, on that note, guys, thank you very much. We have to get to another guest, but thank you all very much for this very interesting conversation.